Hey there YouTube fans, AC Productions here, and today has finally come. I couldn't wait for this day to happen. Now, I've been wanting to do this installation for quite some time. I actually did this video a little bit while back, but because of some complications, I wasn't able to complete the video. But now that I got everything all set and done, and I got all the parts I needed to do this video, upgrading our stock brake rotors to these wave rotors. Now you're asking yourselves like, wait a minute, Alfonso, you have two front brake rotors there. Our bikes only have one. Well, that is true, but I was just giving you guys a little teaser of what's going to happen in the future, and what I would like to happen is for you guys to smash that like button. So the more likes I get on this video, the more it's going to push me on getting those other parts that I need to complete upgrade to the brake system. So that's all I'm going to say about the brake system right now, guys. But as you can see, you know, I do have two front rotors, one rear rotor, and if you see that little brake caliper bracket on both sides, that's what we're going to need for the next part. All right, guys, now before we get into the tools you're going to need to do this installation, I just wanted to show you the extra piece that you're going to need to get to make this installation work. Now in front of you we have the front wave rotor, which actually is a lot bigger than our stock rotor, and that's why we need this extension plate. Now the extension plate doesn't come with all the parts that you're going to need to do the installation, so I'll have a description here at the showing the size of these extra two bolts you see here on the left side to make this adapter plate work. And then obviously we got the rear rotor right here on the bottom. Now it's kind of very hard and very difficult. It took me a while to find this adapter plate, and with the last person I dealt with, it just was a really big mess. I don't want to get into too much of a gripe about this, but you know, I am looking to find a machinist on actually custom making this adapter plate. Now if you guys are interested on doing this installation and want to get this adapter plate, please leave me a comment below letting me know that you're interested. The price for the brake adapter plate is not set in stone right now. I'm still trying to work out details, but as soon as I do get a price, I will let you guys know. Without further ado, let's go ahead and let me show you the tools that you're going to need to do this installation of the bigger wave rotor brake discs. All right, first things you're going to need is going to be a front and rear bike stand. Now let's move on to the tools that you're going to need besides those two. All right, so I know I have a lot going on here, but don't let all these amount of tools deter you from doing the install. I'm going to go through them one by one and letting you know what they're going to be used for. So here on the top we have the torque wrench that we're going to be using at the end when we're putting everything back together to torque down all the bolts down to spec. After that, underneath that on the left is going to be a T45 Allen key. Then after that, next to it is going to be a 6mm Allen key, a 17mm socket, then a 12mm socket. On the right it's going to be a ratchet with an extension bar. Underneath that it's going to be two open-end wrenches at 12mm. Then going back on the left with the black sockets, the one right next to the wrenches is going to be a 22mm, then a 19mm, then a 17mm, and that's going to be for the bolts coming off of the wheel. Next we have some thread lock, which we're going to be using for the reinstalling of the bolts for the rotors and for the brake caliper and the bracket. Underneath that we have isopropyl alcohol. Now that's going to be in also with the blue shop towel. It's going to be used to clean the rotors. Other than that, next we have the bungee cords that are on top of the paper towel, and that's going to be used to hold the brake caliper in the front so it's just not dangling by the brake line. Okay, so now optional things are going to be on the right side. You're going to see a needle nose pliers. That's going to be optional for the rear end. That's going to be, if you have the rear tire hugger, you may need to remove it, so that's where the needle nose pliers are going to come in handy, because we have to remove some other parts along with that tire hugger. Along with that, on the top of the needle nose pliers, you're going to see two Allen keys. One is going to be 6mm and the other one's going to be 5mm, and then the handle for the Allen key bits. Now that's going to be if you happen to do the crash sliders, which are right here. If you did this install, you're going to have to remove those in order to get access to removing the wheel. Over here at the bottom, you're also going to see, I left this over here just because when we do take the wheel out, I found out this long piece over here is great to put underneath the wheel to kind of hold it in place, so when you take it off and slide it back on, you're not holding the whole entire weight of the wheel to put it back on there. But I'll show you all that stuff once we get to it. All right, speaking of getting to it, let's get to it. Actually, let's get this installation going. Okay, so there are two ways of actually removing bolts of the front rotor. I'm particularly not a really strong guy, so I'm gonna go with the second option, and pretty much that's gonna be me keeping the wheel on the floor before I put it on the bike stand. I'm gonna remove each one, not completely, but I'm gonna loosen each one with my ratchet, and that'll be with the H6 Allen key. The first option would be to remove the wheel completely and put it on the bench, if you guys have a workbench table, and then put the wheel and then just go ahead, hold on to the tire and then loosen up the bolts that way. But like I said, I'm not a strong guy to even do that, and I've never removed obviously the rotor before. And just go ahead and loosen up each one of the bolts, and then I'll show you what to do next. Now, before we actually get into removing the wheel itself completely, this only applies to if you actually installed fork sliders. If you did, what you're going to need to do is remove them, and if you particularly bought these particular ones, it's going to be a 5mm Allen key, one on each side to hold the bolt and on one, and to unscrew it on the other end. If you did not purchase these particular fork sliders, or any fork slider for that matter, and you don't have anything there, okay, at this point I kind of want to share with you what just happened to me, and it could be a real world situation that could happen to you, that the rotor bolts are actually been from factory are with red Loctite. You got to do it one at a time but staggered. What I mean is don't go just on this one and keep on loosening it until it comes off, because that kind of creates heat as you're unscrewing it out of the spot. What you want to do is just turn a little bit on this one, then go to the next one, turn a little bit on that one, and so on and so forth until you get all of them loosened enough where you're able to take out the bolt. Now, what just happened to me is that I got all of these up here pretty loosened. When I got to this one, when I went to loosen that one, it actually broke off on me, and as you could see, part of the rest of the bolt is inside. So what I need to do is get that tapped out and then get a replacement bolt for that spot. Now, if that happens to you, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have to get, it's preferably to, when you have the wheel out, take it somewhere, get it tapped out, or if you know how to tap out a bolt, do it yourself, and then get a replacement bolt in its place. So right now, I already got, like I said, I got the rest of them already loose, besides the one that broke off on me. Now what I'm going to do is going to get the front wheel stand, and we're going to put the front wheel stand on, and then we're going to get our 17mm socket on one end and 19 socket on the other end, and we're going to go ahead and loosen up the bolt and take out the axle nut and take out the axle rod and take out the wheel. Alright, so first things first, let's go ahead and grab our front and rear bike stands, and let's go ahead and prop up the bike. I'm going to go ahead and grab the rear stand and put that first. I'm going to get the front stand, and I'm going to go ahead and put it onto the front wheel second. We'll pretty much last. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. Now, I don't have the particular style of motorcycle stands that actually come with the wheel holder, or I'm not sure what you actually would call it, but what I did is that I do have something that's kind of pretty much will hold the wheel up when it's time to put it back on. What you want to do is just pretty much get a piece of wood or something that's equivalent to the height of where the wheel is up, and just put it underneath it. So when you take the wheel axle rod out, the wheel is not going to completely fall out, and it'll just kind of land on the piece of wood or whatever it is that you put underneath the wheel. Okay, now that we got the fork sliders off, next we're going to grab our sockets. On the left side is going to be a 17mm, so you go ahead and put that on there right now. So now this is not going to be the side you're going to be loosening. The part you're going to loosen is going to be on this side, and now on that side is going to be a 19mm socket, but on this side it's going to be the side that you're going to be loosening it up. So let's go ahead and loosen up the bolt on this side. Okay, now that we got the bolt already loosened, you can just go ahead and undo the bolt, and you should be able to just slide out the axle shaft. It should be able to just slide out. If not, maybe want to get like a soft rubber mallet or something, or just get your thing and just give it a small little tap to get it out. But if it was properly lubricated, which it was, it should slide out fairly simple and easy. Alright, so let's go ahead and slide this guy out. Let's go ahead and just twist it a little bit to get it out completely. There we go. Alright, once this is out, go ahead and put this off to the side. Alright, now that we got the axle shaft right out, now since the wheel had dropped down and is resting on the little thing there, you could just go ahead and probably, let's see if it will come out. May not come out because of the wheel fender is on. So just go ahead and twist this or do something to actually get down. Now what just fell is one of the spacers that go over here over by the bearing, which is fine because we're going to be putting that back on anyway when we install the wheel. So go ahead and drop it down, and then go ahead and pop out the wheel. Alright, so now the wheel is out, and now we're going to go ahead and put this off to the side. And I just wanted to let you guys know that I thought it was red Loctite that was on these bolts, but it's actually green Loctite. So that could be why they were really painted about to remove. But once you take out the bolt, you're going to notice there's going to be a lot of that Loctite powder on there. And what you want to do is just make sure you blow out all that powder and get that stuff cleared off the threads. So once you blow out all the thread lock powder off of there, just go ahead and put your bolts off to the side. And then you can go ahead and remove your brake disc rotor off of your bike. Now, if your rotor is still in really good condition, obviously this one is still in really good condition, you can go ahead and put it off to the side. Who knows, you may need it in the future again if you need to use it, or you could sell it on eBay. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead, I'm going to blow out some of this residue from the Loctite that was coming from the factory, clean it up a little bit, and then see what I could do about this bolt and maybe tap it out and then go ahead and get a replacement bolt for that side. So as right now, since you do have the wheel out, it'd be a good time to clean it. Okay, after you cleaned out the inside of each individual hole from all that factory thread lock dust, now you want to go ahead and grab your brand new rotor. You want to make sure you put it in the right way. They are directional. If you notice over here on the rotor that there is a little like groove inside, and that's where the bolt's going to sit. If you put it on the other way, you're going to notice it's all flat on each one, and definitely you don't want to put it on that side. You want to make sure that the bolts sit nice and flush. Okay, so let's go ahead and install it. And you also notice that there is some writing on the rotor itself. So I'm going to go ahead and place it on there like so. I'll make sure that they're aligned very well. After you do that, now what you want to do next is you want to grab your bolts and then put a little bit of thread lock on each one of the bolts on the threads. So let's go ahead and put a little bit, I'm going to get it started, and put a little bit of thread lock on each one of them, and then go ahead and hand tighten all the bolts onto the rotor and wipe down the rotor. Make sure you get both sides. This will get rid of all of the oily residue that came from factory or where the rotors came from. Go ahead and give it a good wipe down. Make sure you get the other side, same thing. Okay, now that you hand tighten the bolts and then just pretty much tighten down all the way with your ratchet, now next we're going to grab our torque wrench and we're going to put the 6mm on the torque wrench. So we got the 6mm on the torque wrench, and we're going to set the torque wrench over to 17 foot-pounds. So now that is specifications straight from the R3 manual. So go ahead and tighten down the bolts to the recommended specifications. Let's go ahead and torque these down. All right, there's the first one. Then after you get that one down, get these things out, go across to the next one and go ahead and torque that one down. All right. Go ahead. So pretty much you want to go in a crisscross pattern on tightening down all the bolts. Once you get all the bolts tightened down, I'll show you what to do next. Alright guys, now that I already have the rotor on there, if you haven't already smashed that like button, go ahead and smash that like button now, because just having that rotor on there right now, before we have it on the bike, it looks amazing. It looks awesome. Can't wait to have it on the bike. It's definitely going to change the look of the R3. Alright, so let's move on to the side and let me show you on how to remove the brake caliper. Okay, now that we're over here by the brake caliper, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our T45 Allen key and we're going to go ahead and remove these two bolts. So go ahead and remove those two bolts. Okay, now that I removed the bottom one, go ahead and unscrew the top one. And now that we got the top one unscrewed, what we're going to do right now, let me actually go get those bungee cords. Just going to go ahead and just hook it up to the hole right over here or whatnot. There we go. And then just pretty much just wrap it over on the top on this little hanger area, and this should give it enough support to have it where it's not just hanging there. So now that we got the bungee cord actually supporting the brake caliper. Okay, so now before we put our wheel back on, we want to make sure we grab our axle rod. And at this point, if you want to go ahead and maybe coat a little bit of grease on the axle rod and then put this off to the side, and then we're going to get the wheel. Okay, at this time you want to put in those wheel spacers that we had popped off at the beginning. And we're going to go ahead and get a little bit of lithium grease on them. So just put a little bit, some grease, and you just go ahead and just wipe it with your finger on this spacer. Doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to coat the area. Alright, so then just go ahead and pop those guys right back into the wheel. Alright, so that one's in. You want to go ahead and do the same thing with the other one. Okay, now that we have our lithium grease on there, just want to go ahead and flip the wheel over and then just go ahead and pop that guy in as well. All right, so now that we got that one in there, just going to go ahead and wipe off the excess of the lithium grease because we want to make sure that we don't attract any dirt or any debris in this area. So let's go ahead and just give this a nice little wipe down. And same thing on the other side. If you happen to see any dirt or debris on that side, just go ahead and give that a good wipe down as well. All right, so now that we got both wheel spacers in, now let's go ahead and slide the wheel back in place. Go ahead and get the wheel on. Once you get it on there, as you can see, you just go ahead and slide the axle rod through. Go ahead and get our wheel nut on and just go ahead and hand tighten for now. All right, so now let's go ahead and get our brake caliper on. All right, guys, kind of wanted to share this with you that I ran into a snag. Now, the reason I say that is because even though that the brake pads are spaced out, I have to remember, and I kind of forgot that these have been adjusted to the old stock rotor. Now these are brand new, and as you can see, the pistons are sticking out just a little bit. Now what I'm going to have to do to get that spacing I need, I'm going to have to reset the caliper pistons to allow more space in between to fit the new rotor. In order to remove the brake pads, you see this little clip right over here. We're going to have to remove that clip and then slide this pad out, and then we're going to have to go ahead and slide the other pad out so we can get a flat piece of metal or something so we could reset both of these calipers back to being flat. All right, guys, now that I've already remove the brake pads off of the caliper, as you can see, now what we're going to need to do is going to have to reset these two pistons. The tools you're going to need now is going to be something like this, a clamp or whatnot, and then I'm going to use this to put over the piston so I could reset it. Just really quickly, I didn't really show you how to remove the brake pads just because, like I said, I got that video, but pretty much it's a little pin right over here that's like so. You move those two little clips. Once you remove those two clips, you're able to slide the pin out. Once you slide the pin out, they kind of just come right out. And then there's a little bracket over here, which is this one that kind of falls out, but you can put that right back in once we put the brake pads in. So let's go ahead and reset those pistons. For my situation, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this like so, just so it could be flat like this. That way we could push both pistons in at the same time. And I'm going to grab this piece and then just put it in like so, like this, and then clamp it down until both pistons are recessed and flat to the casing. Okay, now that I've gotten the two pistons already resetted, as you can see, now they're flush with its housing. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the brake pads back in its place. So the longer part goes towards the pistons and the little shorter part, or the little part, goes towards the outside. Okay, now let's grab our thing and put it in. Kind of hard for you guys to see because it's so tight in this area where I'm filming, but it pretty much just goes into that notch and then the brake pad just slides in. After that, go ahead, hold that place in, and then let's grab our other piece, put it onto the little peg right here, and then just slide it in like so. Now that you got it in like this, let's grab our little rod here, push that through, push it all the way through. You may want to have to push this part of the brake pad in a little bit, and then just pop it in all the way. Once you get it all the way in, next you're going to put the little pin in through here, and then put the little pin on the outside over here. Okay, now that we got everything all situated, now when you look in here, now as you can see, now we have a lot bigger spacing to allow the front rotor to slide in. Alright guys, now this part is up to you. For me, I didn't want the plate to be silver, so I spray painted it black finish, so it's like not shiny at all. It's just a color black. Now the spray paint I used to paint bracket is this one. It's the high heat Rust-Oleum flat black paint. Now the only reason I chose the high heat was because the rotors, you know, in the braking area can get probably hot or whatever, or maybe a little bit warm, so I didn't want to use regular paint. Any heat were to get to the regular paint, it could cause it some chipping or the paint to start peeling, so I decided to just go with some high heat. Can't go wrong with it, not gonna damage anything or, you know, do anything. So therefore that's how it looks. So it's gonna look good on the bike. And then I also decided to paint the bolts in the same color. Right now they're kind of still drying, but here they are. So all the head of the bolt is black, so when I put it with the plate, it'll all be black in that area. Alrighty guys, now to put the brake caliper bracket. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and slide it in, but at the same time you want to make sure that you put your brake caliper. Alright, so here's our brake caliper, so you want to make sure that you slide your brake caliper in. Once you get it in, then just keep it towards the bottom. So it is going to get a little bit tricky on actually putting it in, so just make sure that your brake pads are spaced apart to allow it to go in for the rotor. So you're gonna have to kind of wiggle it in there. I'm gonna pause the camera because the camera's in my way of doing this, but just make sure you be careful, try to get it in there. Once you get it in there, I'll pretty much show you how to slide the extension plate on. Okay, now that I got my brake caliper already on the rotor, so now it's just resting towards the bottom. Now next we're going to do is we're going to grab our plate. So here it is. Now you want to make sure that these notches correspond with the fork. So it's going to go ahead and slide it in. So I'll show you, just go ahead, put it in like so. So I could do this on the camera so you guys could see how I do it without my hands being too much in the way. Then you also may want to move your caliper also to allow it to go in. So there we go. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it hanging like that. But so like I said, just kind of like at an angle and then slide it in like so, at the same time moving your caliper on doing so. Okay, so now that we got that in, I was going to use the stock factory bolts to put it on over here for the caliper, but I decided to go a different route and get different bolts. Now these bolts, all right, so here they are. I also decided to paint them black, and originally they were silver. And now here is the sizes of these bolts. So you could do the same. So like I said, the reason I didn't go with the factory ones is because they were too long, and you don't need them that long because the plate is actually smaller. Because before they had to go through all of this to actually get to the caliper, but now since we got the extension plate's a lot smaller or thinner. Now we're gonna get these other bolts. Now these are gonna be the extra bolts also. Now here's the sizes for these bolts. All right, now these are going to be just a little bit longer, obviously, because we need to go through the whole spacing of the fork. All right, so let's go ahead and slide it up and get our bolts here. Oh, besides, before I forget, go ahead and put some thread lock on both of the bolts. Okay, put some thread lock. All right, now I'm going to slide those in. Slide this, and we're going to go ahead and hand tighten these for now. I also forgot to mention that on the left is the bolts that I bought from the store. They didn't have the shorter bolt, so I pretty much bought their smallest bolt. And like I said, here is the size of this particular bolt on the left. What you're going to need to do is use your Dremel tool and cut a little section of it. As you can see on the right, I already cut it so you guys can see the comparison, because the one on the right is what we're going to be using for the brake caliper. So I found an easy way to measure how much thread you're going to need for the bolt, and what I did is I just pretty much used my vice grip. Now the vice grip's width is pretty much, once you put it against the head of the bolt, just clamp it down and then just cut it here, and I would say that'll be the perfect width of what you need for the thread for the caliper bolt. All right guys, so I already went ahead and put the bottom bolt just to hold the caliper in place. These are already in. Now as you can see, now here's our shortened bolts. You can go ahead and put a little bit of thread lock on the threads. All right, so now that we got the thread lock on the threads, I'm gonna go ahead and put that in like so. All right, so we're gonna go ahead, and you may want to move the caliper a little bit just so you could align the bolt with the thread. Now that we got that hand tightened, I'm gonna go ahead and put my finger on the other side to make sure that it's flush. If it's not flush, as long as it's inside the thread hole, that's fine. But if you have it protruding a little bit out from the thread hole, that's not good. You just want to make sure that it's either flush with the thread hole or pushed in a little bit. But if you have it sticking out just a little bit, even a hair, you definitely don't want that, because once you start turning the wheel, it's going to catch onto the rotor, and I mean on this part over here. So as you can see, these parts right here, if the bolt is sticking out, it's going to catch on here, and it's not going to allow the wheel to spin freely, and it's going to catch, and it can really damage a lot of things. All right, so now let's go ahead and get our torque wrench and go ahead and torque down these bolts to 25 foot-pounds. So now that we have resetted the caliper pistons, you're going to have to go ahead and pump your lever. You're going to notice that once you, hold on, let me see if I can get this to move. So you're going to have to go ahead and pump your lever. You're going to notice that your lever is going to go all the way in, but don't be alarmed. Just keep on pumping it, because what you're doing now is that you're actually pushing out the pistons that are in here to match with this rotor. So just go ahead and keep pumping your brake until you feel it firm. Once you feel it firm, then we know that the caliper, the brake pads are already seated and actually adjusted to this rotor. At this point, when we do get the bike out on the road, I don't suggest for you to go onto the track right away. Just take it easy on the brake pads as you ride to get them seated with the brand new rotors. Once they get seated, then you could go ahead and, you know, put probably a little bit more pressure as you ride more and more. Okay, now that we got everything set up over there, now we could go ahead and tighten down our axle nuts. It's going to be a 19 millimeter on this side, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on that side. And on the other side, you want to make sure you put your 17 17 millimeter. So we're going to put our ratchet on the other side for 17 millimeter, our torque wrench on this side for the 19 millimeter, and we're going to torque it down to 38 foot-pounds. If you did this particular install, which is the front fork crash sliders, if you did this install, go ahead and reinstall your front crash sliders in. Okay, now that we got our front fork sliders on, so I wanted to break down this video into two parts. Now this concludes the first part of the video. If you don't end up watching the second part of this video, I hope you found this first part of the video helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you haven't yet subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification bell, that way you guys are up to date with today's video. I also have links to all the products used in the making of this video down in the description below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. If you did not enjoy the video, hit the dislike button and let me know in the comments below on what you disliked about the video. And thank you for watching.